right, so we've got 315, the few, the faithful, the loyal, those who are unemployed. It's one of those. So which one are we? A little bit of all of those things. A little bit of all those things. Excellent, excellent. Well, super excited to be here with you guys today. My name is Lee Scott, and I'm going to be sharing with you some practical tools and success stories that we've had the privilege of being part of with clients in the public sector around developing, implementing, and maintaining a dynamic and effective strategic management system. So not just the plan, but actually the ongoing management and monitoring of that. I promise 3 things for you guys here today. I promise that you'll get something practical and specific that you can take away to be able to use with your teams at whatever level you're operating at. I also promise to share with some success stories with you so you see live examples of how other folks in public sector context have done this. And then I also promise to bring a ton of freaking energy. And because that's kind of who I am and that's what I'm known for. And that's why they put me at the 3 o'clock spot usually on this conference. I do ask, and I'm going to be unabashed in making this request of you. I ask for something in return from you, for me giving you 100% of myself, and that is I ask for all of you to give me a review on how this session went. I'm very proud to say that the last 2 years running, our session has been the #1 highest rated session of the entire conference, and I made it a very explicit, specific strategic goal to make sure that we hit that again this year. So I'm going to throw it all out on the line. The bar has been raised, but if you loved what you saw here today, please give us a rating so we can see if we can keep that winning streak going. So let's jump right into it. So Unleashing Leaders is the name of our organization, and our passion is accelerating the changes that you seek. And you'll see that in everything that we do with all 36 of our change agents and all of our back office angels, it's about helping to accelerate change for you. And we believe our philosophy is that leadership starts with that core, strong leadership team. That leadership's not an individual sport, it's a team sport. And so who is it that you've got that's your partner in crime to help make changes happen in your organization at whatever level you are? And then there's 3 outcomes of that great leadership team. The first of those is clarity. Where are we going and why? What is our purpose? Who are our customers? What are we here to do? Who are we here to serve? Then how do we align our scarce resources and our precious processes to help make sure that we're delivering as much value towards that direction as we can? And then of course there's the people side of how do we really engage the hearts and minds and the strengths of those individuals so that they can be bringing their best to that game. And that flywheel then spins and recreates to create the best organizations possible. So I've got a little warm-up activity for you guys. I know it's kind of sleepy. You thought you'd get away with just listening. That's not going to happen here. So I've got a little diagram up here. And this is a diagram of a bus, my best artistic rendition. You can tell art's not my strength. But what I want you to do is decide for yourself which side of that bus is the front. Don't say it out loud, right? So use your inside, thinking. Just decide for yourself which side is the front. Is it the right side? Is it the left side? And why is it? What data kind of gives it away to you that this side is the front of the bus? Now I see a lot of my former clients in here, so you guys already know this particular gig. That's fine. Just play along with everybody else. It's totally cool. All right. On the count of 3, indicate by pointing in the direction which direction you think is the front of the bus. 1, 2, 3. All right. So now look around at the room. Keep your hands up, look around the room. For those of you who can't see what's going on here, it looks something like this. All right. Now this is your organization right now. You've got really hardworking, smart, talented, and frankly pretty good-looking people, I might add, Tammy, that are on your team making stuff happen today and trying their darndest. But if they got different opinions about which direction is front, we're going to have some challenges. We're not going to deliver the best that we possibly can for our customers. And there's lots of good reasons why you might have picked one side or the other. If you pick the right side, maybe you say, well, the window's bigger, and so that makes more sense. Or I naturally lead kind of left to right, and so that makes a little bit more sense. Or maybe the tire looks like, or the bumper is a different size. So there's all these data elements that you can use to justify, this side or that side. When it comes to strategy, though, there's really 2 types of data that you're going to value a little bit higher than the rest. And that is the data related to your customer and the data related to your context. Customer and context, those will always guide you well when you're talking about strategy. So in the case of a school bus, the customer is the passenger. And from a passenger's perspective, a bus is to get you from A to B, and that means you got to get on it to get where you're going, which means you need a door. And so if the door is the key interface for that customer, and you don't see a door on this side of the bus, then where by definition is the door? It's on the other side, right? And so from a customer perspective, I'm looking for that door. And from a context perspective, in this case, if you're in the United States, if the door is on the other side of the bus in the United States, then that means that that side of the bus is the front. Do you guys follow me? Right now, if we're in a British or other country where it's a different context, then you might say that that's the side of the bus, is the front, right? So it depends always on your customer, always on your context. So here's a photo that kind of helps you be able to see it. If you're like, I'm still not seeing it. There it is, right? So the door is on the other side of the bus. That means that side is front. And if we can use those principles of our context and our customers, that'll help orient us in terms of where we're going with our teams and why. So let's talk a little bit about the VOPAR model, because I'm required by law, if I'm doing something with the state, I have to have an acronym per hour of instruction. So our acronym, of course, is the VOPAR model, and this is not in a book, at least not yet. This is something that, as practitioners in the field, out there doing hundreds of these a year, you know, for the last 2 decades now, of doing strategic plans at all different levels. This is what we've kind of boiled down out of the latest and greatest and the best and the coolest into an integrated methodology to how to do strategic management, not just the planning, but the actual implementation and monitoring of it as well. And you've heard of the 7 habits of highly effective people. You've heard of the 5 exemplary leadership practices. There's the 5 functions of cohesive teams. There's the 5 ADKAR model for change management. So we needed something in the strategic management space, and so this is the emerging standard for us in that space. And it stands for visualize, organize, prioritize, actualize, and then revise. And each one of these has kind of like a little mini yin and yang associated that a strategic manager, in terms of complementing their leadership, team, and individual skills, can do to help make sure that that team is focused on serving that customer the best possible with the resources. So taking a closer look at each one of these, the visualize discipline breaks down into 2 components. The first thing is, again, scanning the environment, looking out to see who are my customers and what do they want. What are my customers' customers? What are the challenges and trends that they're facing? So I'm thinking 2 steps outside of myself in anticipation of what's coming down the pipeline for them. And then I'm taking all of that information about what's going on with my customers and the culture and the context of my industry, and then I'm deciding where I want to plant my flag with my team to say, that's where we need to be. That's the position of best opportunity for us to play. And that's the role of vision. Organize then says, okay, now that I've got a clear picture of where I think we need to go and why, it's taking an inventory of what are all the resources that I have to help me get there? What are the assets that I have at my disposal? And what are the liabilities and the risks and the challenges and the impediments? I need to understand those as well too. So being a good visionary leader is not just about visualizing the future, it's also about being able to really visualize clearly what it is that you have right now in the present. Then we can take that and catalog the different resources and risks that we have and organize those out, rather than just a pile of work, into thoughtful groups of work that we would call services and projects. Services are the things that our team provides on an ongoing basis, now and forever, indefinitely, lots of high transactions. Projects are those things that are temporary, unique efforts to change something, right? Those are the 2 major types of work, and we need to manage those differently because their inherent nature is a little bit different. Then based on that catalog, now I can prioritize. And as human beings, we're much better at making relative categorizations than we are absolute, right? You know, if you ask me, you know, how much do I love each one of my kids? Well, I love all of them this much, right? Just as I love you this much, right? Now, on any given day, you ask me which one would I keep? I can make that relative comparison. You know what I'm talking about? Right now, it changes day to day. I'm like, oh, you're not the favorite anymore, right? You know, so-and-so just bumped you off, right? But you can make those relative comparisons, but in an absolute, it's really tough. So prioritizing is be able to look at what is the overall return on investment for this opportunity, given this time, given the resources and risks that I have. And then I make my priorities in a rank order, 1 to N. Not all high, not medium, not low, because we all know what happens, and everything becomes the highest high, high. And we are in California right now, so that's technically legal, but it's not going to be particularly helpful for your management strategy to make everything high, high. You make your bets, and then you got to play, right? You got to take action. You got to actualize. And actualize is when you make the decision to take 50% of Sandy and allocate her on such and such a project to get accreditation for a department, hypothetically speaking, right, Sandy? It's when you decide to take 20% of somebody else and you say, I'm going to put you on this service to serve this customer, whatever it is, right? You're now placing your bet, and you're allocating those scarce resources. You're delegating authority to make decisions, and you're having them and yourself take courageous action. Notice it didn't say correct action. Strategy has nothing to do with being correct. Strategy has everything to do with being clear and being courageous. You'll probably be wrong a good portion of the time, but that's okay. That's why we have this last step, which is the revise step. And so that's where we're assessing our progress, and we're saying, hey, based on what I had at the time available to me in terms of information and resources, right, am I moving closer to that goal or not? And if I'm not, then I have an opportunity to make an adjustment. And so then I adapt my team's plans. Maybe I change who I'm allocating. Maybe I'm changing how much they're allocated. Maybe I'm changing the way I've organized the work, or maybe I'm changing the way our actual goals in the first place. I thought this is where we should be, but based on how things are going, that doesn't make sense anymore. We really need to be over here, right? So this creates a very fluid, very agile, very modern strategic management process. So to give you an example of this at kind of like the high level, this is the most extreme example of this model I've seen. I watched recently the movie The Martian and read the book as well. If you're at all a geek on sci-fi and being able to get by, kind of it's like a modern Robinson Crusoe, right? Except he's stranded on Mars, not on an island. So the storyline goes this. Matt Damon plays this astronaut, and he's left for dead in a storm. His team leaves abruptly. He's stranded on Mars. They don't know he's alive. He has no communications. He's got about 45 days worth of food in a habitat that's designed to last maybe a month or two, and he'll be there at least 4 years before anybody else comes back to say hi, right? And you thought a Tuesday as a state worker was a bad day. Right, that's officially a bad. You think your resources are limited? Man, this cat is like struggling. And so what did he do? So he wakes up and he's like, what the heck? He's got to figure out what happened. And he kind of pieces it together, right? And then he looks out there and he's like, okay, I'm screwed. Right, that was his environmental assessment, by the way, right? And then his vision that he created out that was, I'm not going to die on this rock, right? It's like, I might die trying, but man, I'm going to die in motion. I'm not going to die here curled up in a fetal position crying. So that was his vision. And then, of course, the next part of the movie goes and he takes his inventory and he's counting all of his food packets and he's looking at how long his water will last and what the air scrubbers will be, and he's taking an inventory of everything he's got, right? Because he's not going to be able to do a BCP to get any more, right? And you knew the answer was no anyways. Well, he's not even going to bother working on the paperwork. He's just like, this is what I got is what I got. I'm not asking for any more. And so he gets organized and he creates routines, and he's got his daily services, his daily chores, where he's going to clean off the solar panels and make sure the water purifier is working properly, and he's got his projects, right? How do I extend my food supply? How do I extend my transportation? How do I improve my communications so I can be able to get back in touch with Earth? Those are little special projects that he's working on. And then he prioritizes those and like, well, I need all of this, but what's going to kill me the fastest? And that's what I'm working on today, right? And so it's a very purposeful focus. He works on one thing at a time, for a time, does it the best that he can, takes bold, courageous action on it. He ends up blowing himself up at least 3 times in the movie, right? Has lots of failures, lots of setbacks, right? But he's taking action and he's learning. And then he's always updating his calculation. He's like, okay, now I'm going to last 160 days. Now I'm going to last 240 days. Now I've got until 340 days. I've only got 3 more years to go, right? And every single day he's constantly improving his station. So great movie. And as I'm watching this, I was like, dude, you totally stole my VOPAR process. I mean, what's going on with that? Right? I need to talk to Matt and make sure I get a cut of it. So let's now translate from the extraterrestrial to the practical and look at strategy. And strategy, basically all that means is that's a vehicle. It's a vehicle from getting from point A to point B. That's your strategy. So strategic plan is your vehicle for helping people know where we're trying to go. And you have choices in today's vehicle market. You have the radio flyer. All right, that's one option available to you, and a great one, and I enjoyed it. I've got one for my kids right now. We tool around in it. It allows you to get, soccer practice in your supplies and playing around at the park. I remember as a young kid being put up on the top of Dead Man's Hill, right? You turn the handle around, right, and your buddy's like back, and you're like, oh, you got it. You got the helmet on, right? You're good to go, right? And you push you off down, and you're going down that hill, right? I mean, so that was your first set of wheels, and man, you were alive, and you were free, and you were unleashed. And then you have another option in today's market, which is something that looks like that. All right, modern, sophisticated, zero emissions, massive accelerations, all the latest in safety features and communications and comforts, right? So which one of those do you want to be your ride? The Tesla, anybody else signed up for that too, right? Is it just me? Right, a few other 100,000 folks are too, right? And so if you zoom in a little closer on these, what it reveals is kind of the trade-offs between your typical strategic planning approach and more of a modern approach. So if you zoom in on the radio flyer wagon, those wheels are hard bolted directly onto the chassis. right? And so when you're riding, have you ridden into any of those things? Man, it hurts, man. It's like you feel every bump on that ride. Man, it's a bam, bam, bam. I mean, it's like your neck is out of shape. I mean, it just tears you up, all right? And then the steering mechanism is very rudimentary, right? And so you're going down that hill, man. You don't change your direction, because if you do, you're going to flip and kill yourself, right? You might going to hit the wall, but I'd rather hit the wall than skid my knee. So you're just, it's not very dynamic, right? It's really rough on the body. Versus a modern vehicle, you got this suspension, right? And so the body of the car is, it's got the mass and it's got a really smooth ride, and then you got the suspension and the shocks and all that stuff to kind of, smooth out the ride as you hit the bumps as you go. And so we need a strategic management method that allows us to have a stable element for the ride, but also allows us to be responsive and agile to the jittery bumps along the way. So if we take this and then compare it to the strategy options that we have, the traditional approach is a monolithic 20 to 30 page strategic plan document, right? It takes about 6 months, 6 guys in a room, get together, smoking cigars, come up with this thing. And everything in there is good stuff, right? Don't get me wrong, right? You've got, the history of our organization and our wonderful achievements, and here's some cool things. Everything in there is valuable. The challenge is some of those elements are stable, and some of those are very volatile. Some of those are out of date before the ink dries when you first print it. Right? And so maintaining this becomes really, really challenging. And then your budget and your org chart, feels the bumps along the way. A more stable and dynamic tool set that is more of a modern vehicle, right? We extract out those stable components for, maybe a short little strategic plan or an operational plan description that kind of describes, hey, these are our key diagrams, and give a verbal explanation for that. And then we're pulling out little one-page elements that we can use to refer to and orient and align people. And we're going to go over some examples of those from some of our clients in a little bit. And then those then have the struts and the shock absorbers to be able to then add on all those other dynamic elements. So what's our performance dashboard for how we're measuring our progress? What's our service portfolio as we make changes and changes to how we allocate our resources to our services? Our project portfolio, what are the key investments that we're making? What's our risk management plan? What's our organizational change and communication plan? And then, of course, still we have a budget and org chart. And that kind of smooths out that ride if we have those elements as more two separate dynamic tools versus one monolithic tool. So if you put those into a system and kind of look at the anatomy for how these tools play together, and then we'll go into some examples of them, you take that community map, that's kind of at the top. Everything we do starts with the customer, and especially true in the public, right? We are public servants, right? So we're here to serve help me out, we're here to serve the public, absolutely. So who are our customers? Do we know who they are? Do we have a common language for them? Because as we all know, language and vocabulary drive the culture and vision. So how do we get on the same page with that? Then from that, what's our strategy map? Again, a one-page diagram that says what's our mission, vision, values, and goals. This is the stuff that doesn't change every other week. This is stable. This is our North Star. This gives us a sense of identity and consistency, because in a storm, I need that fixed anchor point. As long as I have one reference point, I can handle any amount of chaos. But if everything's spinning, then I have no frame of reference with which to be able to adapt. Right? Then we can then have the dynamic components with our performance dashboard. And this is a handful of key level metrics that tie back to our specific objectives for that year that we're monitoring on a monthly basis. I've got teams at CalPERS, they're looking at it weekly right now because they really got to get on it and they want to get things organized. Right? But typically on a monthly basis that we're looking at, hey, are we moving the needle or not? Are we getting closer to this objective or not? Then taking a look at our service portfolio. What are those ongoing activities that we're doing to serve our customers? Here, a lot of folks use the org chart as a way of managing their services. And the org chart's a horrible tool for that. I mean, the org chart's a good tool for figuring out who reports to who and who approves whose timesheet. Right? But that's all an org chart actually tells you. Right? And now there might be a correlation between your org chart and your services, but usually your customers are striping across your org chart. Right? And so the service portfolio looks from the customer perspective. Where's the door? How do I get in? How do I get whatever I need out of this, right? And so understanding our operating model from a service perspective. And then, of course, the projects. And that's usually where the strategy comes in. This is all the sexy, cool stuff. But what are those specific projects and how are they packaged and what's the scope of those and how are they sequenced that we will make the changes to the service to enhance the results for the customer. And, of course, all of this then is then limited and constrained by our assets. And so we've got this asset portfolio, the most precious usually of which is our people's talent and time, the hardest to replicate, the longest to build. We've got our financial, our data, our technological equipment, facilities, natural resources if you're in that kind of agency. And so as a manager, what I'm here to manage is those assets on behalf of how we serve our customers. So the relationships then in this system, for the VOPAR system, is that I'm making choices on how I allocate my assets strategically across the different levels of services that I have, to achieve a certain outcome with my customers in terms of those performance metrics. And if I like what I'm getting, and I'm feeling like I'm getting a great return on investment, customers are happy, everybody's happy, I can stop right there, right? I've done my job, I've optimized it. But for most of us, we're not there. Or if we were there, it's changed because our environment has changed and the customer's tastes have changed. So that's what we need to engage in, guess what? Projects. Right? And so I've got to choose to take some of those resources and invest them in the future in a project. Now, whether you're doing a waterfall or agile or any other combination thereof, no matter what, there's going to be a delay between when you're spending that money to make that improvement and then the time that it actually is deployed into production to be able to see that result. And so there's this delay. Eventually, we see it in our services. Then we get to see, is that making a positive or negative effect on our metrics? And then I make another choice. And this allows me to be able to see the levers that I can then manage as a strategic manager, not just a reactionary, whoever screamed at me the loudest, the latest, to make choices about how, most importantly, I invest those scarce resources. When I take Frank or Abdul or Sarah or whoever it is and I say, you're now going to spend X amount of your time on this on average over the next 6 weeks, that's my strategic bet. Can I justify, can I articulate the relationships between those to make sure that I'm getting the best bang for our buck? So let's look at some examples from some of our clients. So I've got up here EDD and OSHPD. So EDD is Employment Development Department, and they're about 8,000 or so employees. They actually came down from about 10,000, so they've had about a 20% reduction in their workforce over the last few years, and that creates definitely a pinch, if those of you have ever gone through something like that before. They've got 5 or 6 different programs, and they're different funding sources, different color monies, all the types of complexities you probably have in your organization as well too, all right? But all the talk was always around the programs, the products, the funding sources, right? And this was saying, who's our customers? Because I might have the same customer that touches each one of those programs over the course of a year. Let's get more customer-centric. And so that was their community map in terms, we've got claimants, we've got workers, we've got advocates, we've got our public partners, and so forth, right? And the EDT team is there to serve all of those on behalf of California. The other one on the left side then, or on the right side, is OSHPD. That's Office of State Health Planning and Development. They're also similarly kind of schizophrenic. They've got about 800 employees over across 5 major different programs. So you got finance folks doing mortgage loan approval or guarantees for hospital construction. You've got construction workers out there certifying the seismic safety of hospital facilities. You got folks recruiting doctors and nurses. You've got loan repayment programs. You've got data collection and aggregation. Multiple programs, again, different colors of money, different services, different types of professions, all under one umbrella trying to be able to make stuff happen for California. And the focus was on, well, it's me and my profession and my product. How do we think about the customers? And so this is how we brought it up at a higher level to be able to see, hey, we're all here to create more safe and quality healthcare environments. We just happen to contribute in a different fashion. So that's an example of the community maps. Now, a couple of examples on the strategy maps then. So the strategy map is, again, who are we, where are we going, and why. This is the one for OSHPD, because the reality is nobody reads a 30-page document anymore, right? That's not where I'm going to kind of figure out who we are. I mean, we're so ADD, and we got such a short time frame. I mean, I barely have time to read a Twitter post, right? I was like, that's just too long now, right? How do we get it shorter? And so having a one-page visual reference that kind of communicates our identity out to folks. So they've got their rallying cry, one OSHPD working together, was kind of speaking to a strategic imperative they had to be able to work more cross-functionally, more collaboratively in support of their customers. They've got their mission vision, they've got their 4 categorical goals, and then they've got their product and services reference that links out to all the unique things that they do, and then of course their core values. And this doesn't change. This gives stability. This is the smooth part of the ride. Right? And then we have other things that allow for the more volatile and dynamic elements. A couple other, so I wanted to share with you then one practical technique as you're creating one of the elements on your strategy map, which is your mission and or vision or a combination thereof, whatever you want to call it. So the traditional method for actually creating this particular statement, and we've all been through it, and it's a very painful process, right? And it's time consuming and difficult and emotional and all those things. We call that the killing me smalls method. I've participated in it, I've witnessed it, I've actually even guiltily to say, you know, I contributed to it and many years ago, and I was like, I will never have that happen again under my watch, all right? But this particular method, you're probably familiar with it. You get a handful of people, usually only the top execs for that particular organization. One person throws something out, another person nitpicks a particular word, a 20-minute ping pong debate ensues between the loudest personalities in the room. Everybody else checks out, right, rolls their eyes, right? And then once whoever gets tired first, you know, loses. And then you repeat for the next word. And you do that for about a couple of days, and then at the end you limp out with some laundry list of everything so that everybody's included, and it passes legal. Right, I mean, that's kind of your typical kind of approach to creating that particular document. So here's a couple of examples and how it's evolved over the years. So this is Franchise Tax Board, great organization, doing a lot of things right, been a great client. Back in 2007, their entire strategic plan was 16 pages. And it wasn't bad, it was good, it was colorful, it had some good relevant content in there. Their mission at that time was to collect the proper amount of tax revenue. Right, sounds simple enough, right? They're the tax collecting agency, that's their mission. And then somebody raises their hand and say, well, I've got these guys that once every 5 years, they come in on a temporary basis to do this one thing, you know, that only 4 people care about, and they don't feel included in that, and so we need to throw them a bone. So we go, okay, so and operate all the other programs that are entrusted to us. Right, then the budget guy raises his hand and says, hey, wait a second, what are you talking about? We got to make sure we're doing this on budget. So then we have okay, at the lowest cost, right? Then we have the quality gal. There's always a quality gal, and she's like, hey, we got to make sure we're doing it, making it better, making it stronger. And so we go, okay, let's put quality in there because that's important too, right? Then legal, raises their hand. They say, well, we reviewed this, and we got to make sure that we're in alignment with federal, state, local regulations and policies, procedures, provisos here too. So we throw in something around to cover that, right? And now we've got a fantastic mission statement. All right, and this is typical kind of, this is more of a policy statement more than really a mission statement. And it's all good stuff. I'm not knocking any single words on there, but the challenge is if you're a leader, how does that communicate? Like, how many of you remembered what was on there? And you're like, okay, I know where we're going now. What you felt was paralyzed. You're like, don't move, I'll hit an electric fence. So again, how do we simplify it down? How do we get out of this particular mess? So fast forward to 2017, they've just released their latest one. It's 2 pages for the entire department, the entire strategic plan, right? And their mission, which is again, just one element of the whole plan, of course, and it's a simple one, right? To help taxpayers, right? Stop right there. Notice the difference. The last one was to collect taxes. That focused on the process. That focused on the product. This is focused on who? The customer, right? We're here to help customers, in this case taxpayers, that's on their community map. File timely and accurate tax returns, pay the correct amount. Notice also what they've added was why. Right, in the first one, lots of great stuff, but why are we doing it? Why does it matter? Right, and so mission, vision as part of your strategy's got to have that why statement. So what's the customer and why are we doing it? And so their why is to fund the services that are important in California. I was joking with them, I said FTB actually stands for funding the best of California, right? That's what you guys are here for. So that's their